Okay, well, good morning. My name is Don Bernard, and my current position is as a congregational care pastor at Celebration Church in Brantford. And I am have had three careers. I was in the community newspaper business for 20 years, and then taught at the Ross Macdonald School here in Brantford for 20 or so years. And now I'm a part-time pastor, so I feel very blessed to have all of this
background.
We lost your audio, Don.
One of my duties at
a grief recovery course called Grief Share. And it's a 13-week course that deals with pretty much every aspect of grieving and has a lot of practical solutions to grieving. And so much of the information that I'm presenting today is taken from the Grief Share course. I just wanted to acknowledge that at the beginning. Working through grief can be a very lonely experience. The loss of a loved one can leave many unanswered questions as far as how we move on in our lives. Questions such as, is what am I going through normal, or am I losing my mind? Sometimes it's a very difficult situation, and people go through bouts of sadness, depression, and other mixed emotions that leave them feeling, hey, am I going crazy here, or what? But often it's just the fallout from the loss, whatever that loss may be. Another question, why am I not grieving the same as other people? And one of the things that happens is that we as individuals grieve individually. One size doesn't fit all for grieving, although there are some overarching principles that I'll talk about that seem to be the characteristics of people who grieve. But one of the things that will happen is in a family, there'll be, say, the loss of the mother, and one member of the family will be crying all the time. Another member of the family will be holding up and saying, yes, I feel the loss, but I'm doing okay. Other members of the family will have problems sleeping, or have problems with their eating habits changing, overeating or not having an appetite. So there's so many different things that can impact on grieving, and it's an individual thing. And so after the loss of a close loved one, it's not unusual for that to happen. That people will say, and then there are people who are not as close to the situation who are saying, oh, just sort of suck it up, you'll make it through. That's not very helpful, actually. Another question is, what do I do with the deep loneliness and sadness that I feel? Definitely, those two are very, very significant after the loss of a loved one. There's a feeling of loneliness, especially, I think, if it's a spouse of many years. Oh, somebody's having trouble with the sound. Can you hear me, Linda? Okay. Loneliness is a major thing in our society anyway, but I think after the loss of a loved one, especially, as I said, a spouse of many years, definitely that's a hard one. And there's often a very deep sadness that goes along with that. And so that will take time. to work through. And that's the other thing about grief, is that it's not like a 1-minute thing. It's not like I can give you a solution and you'll be over your grief. The fact is that it takes time and it takes effort to work through grief. And so we don't talk about in Grief Share getting over your grief. We talk about working through your grief and not acknowledging it and accepting it for what it is, and trying to find good, positive solutions to working through that grief. How can I get on track with self-care in this time of turmoil? Well, that's one of the things that often happens is people oversleep or have trouble sleeping, or their eating habits change, things like that, and they don't look after themselves the way they should, because they've kind of lost hope in a way. And so actually, self-care is a very important part of grief recovery. Okay, another question is, I feel fearful and overwhelmed. Why can't I seem to make a breakthrough? And this is where I think something like Grief Share or some kind of course or some kind of support system, counseling, professional counseling can help, because oftentimes people get stuck in their grief. Why is somebody knocking on my door right now? This has really been a funny morning. Hold on a second. Oh,
sir. There you are.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, it was a delivery that I wasn't expecting. Okay, so the other thing, another question is, I just talked about this, I realized. Why can't I seem to make a breakthrough? Yes, this is sometimes where you need help, outside help. And that's where counseling or a course or something like that can make a big difference. What can I do about the anger I feel? It all seems so unfair. And as well as loneliness and sadness, often there is a feeling of anger. Maybe there have been problems, mistakes made. Somebody was in care, maybe at a hospital, and there were mistakes made and the person passed away, and there's an anger, right? Or if somebody dies in an accident, car accident or some other kind of accident, and there's often an anger about that accident. Why did it happen? What could we do to prevent it? That sort of thing. So these are some of the sort of the deep questions that seem to be prevalent in the grieving process. This section here I'm going to go into is some principles to help in the grieving process. And so there's 6 of them. One of them is one called acceptance. One of the things that makes it hard is just accepting the loss. It's hard to come to grips with the fact that this person is no longer around and will never be around again. And this sometimes takes quite a while to come to this point of acceptance. Accepting the reality of the loss means acknowledging that even though you didn't want this to happen, you have gone through a major loss that will change your life in significant ways. And so one of the things that happens is people sometimes are in denial even. Sometimes it's just a matter of just being so overwhelmed by the loss that you just can't accept it. And so acceptance of the loss is a huge step forward in making progress and healing. Dealing with the emotions of grief. This involves learning how to process and manage powerful emotions you will likely experience. And I've already talked a little bit about that. Loneliness, sadness, anger, sometimes regret. I know in my own situation with my mother, who passed away a number of years ago now, I had about 6 months of regret that where I was going through in my mind, what about this? What if I had done this? It might have happened differently, or what about that? It might have happened differently. And I had a long time, until at some point I had to say, okay, I can't change that now. We did what we did in light of the information that we had, but I can't change the outcome now. So I have to accept and deal with it. Sometimes the emotions just don't go away that quickly. It just takes time. And sometimes something will happen that will trigger an emotional response 6 months, a year down the line, and that's called being ambushed by by grief. And it's very, very common. You think you're over it, you think you're doing okay, and then something happens. Somebody says something and it reminds you of your loved one, and then all of a sudden those emotions are there. Generally over time that does lessen, but it can linger for a period. Adjusting. This was probably the hardest thing, and that's where this phrase, finding a new normal, comes in. Because adjusting is, you have to say to yourself, really, in a way, talking to this person that has passed away, you're not here with me now, so I have to find a way to adjust in this life without your presence. And so one of the things that you have to realize is you're still alive. You have a life to live. There's meaningful things that can happen in your life, even with the loss of a loved one. And you have to start the process of developing that new life that you can find. And so often it will be being out of your comfort zone a little bit. One of the things that we find with our Grief Share course is that people are reluctant sometimes to even come to the course because they're not sure about what this is going to mean in their lives, the changes that might happen as a result of some of the information and that at Grief Share. The other thing with Grief Share, which I think is great, is you become part of a group. Over 13 weeks, you become part of the group, and people bond. And it's beautiful actually to see. We just finished our course, our recent course last night actually, and we had a little social time, and you could see the bonding that had taken place. These were all strangers when they came, and they found kindred spirits, if you want to use that phrase. Continuing life without your loved one means taking steps forward in your life in a way that honors his or her memory. And this can be, there's so many different things that people can do. Finding a new hobby, making new connections, joining some kind of a seniors group or group, social group, taking up a recreational activities such as bowling, or, well, now the new thing is pickleball. So there's so many things that people can do to rebuild their lives, really, after the loss of a loved one. The other thing is, of course, you can take efforts to honor your loved one. There's so many different ways of doing this. Somebody was just telling me yesterday about somebody that's created a hall of honor, and there's pictures and other things that they have in their house of the loved one, and and it helps them to remember in a positive way the person, because that's also a fear, that you'll forget them over time, and you don't want to do that. They were such a big part of your life. Okay. I think I missed one here. Oh, addressing questions. Death often brings heavy questions. Finding satisfying answers can be a sign of healing. And often people will say why. That is the big question. And the fact is that we often don't know why. And so we have to come to a point where we say, well, I may never know why this happened, but I have to accept it. It's a reality, and I have to live with it and deal with it, and keep going forward, rather than just dwelling on the why of it. You have to go on and say, okay, I will never know why, but I do have to continue on with my life. Sometimes there are things that happen that are actually not just like my mother was up in age and had been ill. Those things are sort of things that seem like a more natural progression. But sometimes I was reading in the paper that there was a drunk driver hit a van and killed 2 children and 1 adult. And obviously he's been charged with impaired driving, the driver of the offending vehicle. The van was just sitting at a stoplight and was rear-ended, and the guy was going at a high speed. And anyway, those are harder questions to deal with, for sure. But so again, it's a point of being in that place of accepting you can't change the situation, and you have to ride out the emotions. Sharing comfort. One of the things that often happens with our grief share course is that people will go through the course maybe once, maybe even twice, and they'll say, well, I wouldn't mind helping with the course. And so they can come on as leaders and helpers, and that helps their healing because they can give back. And this is one of the things that is really I think an important thing in healing from grief is giving back. At some point, you're going to be able to give back and help others who are grieving. And one of the things that makes this kind of thing even more satisfying is that what you find is that people who are grieving really appreciate talking to somebody or sharing with somebody who has gone through it. They understand, and they feel that they understand. And so empathy that you have in your grief, you can share by helping others. And that's a huge thing, because what it is it turns your focus from yourself, which at the beginning, grief is a very self-focused thing, right? You're focused on a loss. I've had this huge loss. But as you go through the healing process, you realize that your experience can be a help to other people. And so that's one of the things that, especially as I say with our grief share course, that we emphasize. So that's where I got the title of my presentation, Finding a New Normal. And so I had sort of 3 points to summarize that: facing the loss and accepting that it has happened and nothing can change that fact. Realizing that you can still have a fulfilling life without your loved one. And this new normal will not be the same as the old normal. And I think that's some of the things that make grieving difficult, is because we want to go back to the way it was. We want the old normal back. But obviously, the passing of a loved one, that can't happen. And so that is why we talk about a new normal. It won't be the same as the old normal because there's a loss there. There's always going to be that loss. No matter how long you live, you're going to have that loss in your life. But there's new things that you can do. There's a new life that you can make, and there's new activities to make life fulfilling again. One of the things that often happens is that one of the signs of healing is that people can laugh again. Laughing often, we often in a brief period, we don't laugh. We don't find life humorous. We don't find things humorous. We don't have those little joys in that. And a sign of healing is that, hey, I actually laughed. That was fun. And you know that life can go on. Here are some additional suggestions. Keep a daily journal. A journal is an excellent way of working through grief, because what happens is, as you enter things, and they don't have to be profound or that elegant. It's just daily writing down the things that are happening, the things that you're feeling, and that sort of thing. And what the value of it, first of all, you're expressing it daily. Secondly, when you look back on it in 6 months, you'll realize just how far you've come. You've made progress because you can see it in your journal. So I would really recommend that. I recommend it anyway. Journaling is, it gives you a record of things that are happening, right? And then another very important thing is find a recovery course. Now, I'm partial to the one that we offer at our church. It's an international course. It's being the headquarters is in the United States. It consists of a series of 13 videos. There's a workbook that goes along with it, and it's a 13 weeks course, and that. But there sometimes funeral homes offer courses in grieving, in the area of grieving, and also there is counseling. Professional counseling can be a big help. Another point is start planning for the future. You still have a life ahead of you, a life to live, and it's good to start planning for the future. Look forward to what's going to be happening. It's not that easy when you're focused on the loss, but there are things that you can do to look forward to the future. And then another point is find a way to honor your loved one's life. There's a example that they have from the grief share that really stuck in my mind was there was a professor at a university, and it was Virginia Tech, I think, in the States. And his daughter was also a student at that university, and there was a shooting on campus. It was very, very well-known shooting at Virginia Tech, maybe 15 years ago now. And his daughter was one of the people that was killed. And of course, that was a huge blow to him. But gradually, he came to realize that maybe he could do something to honor his daughter. And so he got involved in helping, financially and other ways with an orphanage in Haiti. And the orphanage ended up being named after his daughter. So what he did was he turned a tragedy into something really positive, where he could help these children, abandoned children in Haiti. So finding a way to honor your loved one it may not be as big as that, but there are small ways you can do that. So I think that's about the end of my presentation. I hope I fulfilled your expectations. Are there questions, or how does that work, Linda?